Society. I'm also a mother and a foster mother of a Aboriginal, well, he's now a young man, who unfortunately is, as we speak, going through Wilkie and the whole justice system, despite being brought up in a family with lots of love and support and everything. He is generational foster care, and I think that Bruce touched on that. But I guess I'm feeling a little burnt out because, and I'll use Insight as an example. Insight was a really good example in terms of using evidence-based research from all over the country, all over the world. So many reports that I can't even count them all, and yet they refused to even listen, and still, after the Supreme Court, haven't said, okay, we'll stop, it's working. And so, but tonight, thank you for re-inspiring me and re-energizing me, and because I think this is very important. I just wanted to add one more thing, that prisons are anywhere from 30 to 70%, depending where in Canada, more likely for a person to get HIV and hepatitis, particularly hepatitis C. They've already cut the safe tattooing projects in the federal prisons from tattooing and hepatitis, and won't even admit that there's drug use going on in the prisons or unsafe sex to be able to provide harm reduction in our prisons. So that's a huge issue for us as an HIV organization, and thank you.
Thank you for that comment. That's really encouraging. And you know, the government, there was a ruling by the Supreme Court against the government's on Insight. There was a ruling by the Supreme Court against their position on repatriating Omar Khadr. And I just read today that the very same plea bargaining that they're making more difficult for many offenders through this bill, they use that themselves to get out of their election, the charges by Election Canada. So they plea bargained and avoided an embarrassing, I guess, trial for some conservative backroom folks. But hey, they use the system, the very system that they're denying many offenders right now. That, incidentally, plea bargaining is allowing our system to remain somewhat balanced in the face of the kind of overcrowding that some have mentioned. I don't know, Robert, if you want to add anything to that, but on the role of plea bargaining, but that is a part of this bill which is disturbing.
You just mentioned one feature of plea bargaining that's related to the minimum sentence issue that we've already talked a bit about, and that is that when you provide minimum sentences in the law, you're putting coercive power in the hands of the prosecution. Because it goes something like this. We'll lay a charge that doesn't have a minimum sentence if you give up your right to a trial and plead guilty. Otherwise, we'll proceed on the charge that has the minimum sentence. How do you like that choice?
Thank you for that. Okay, go ahead.
Catherine, and my question is, I think, probably more to the politicians. I'm wondering, does a provincial government have any ability to say no to a federal bill like this on the basis that it would devastate the social programs in that province? And I realize we would probably have to change our provincial government to make that happen, but what I really want to know is, do we have the ability to say no?
I'm going to let Maureen begin to answer, but I've noticed some very, very cautious answers from all provincial justice ministers on that very question. But go ahead, Maureen, if you want to dive into that one.
Well, I think it's fair to say that people are being that ministers are being very cautious about it, but we have had several provinces stand up and say we will not accept any offloading, and certainly our province could say that as well, and have failed to do so up to this point. They are beginning to muse out loud that they are a bit concerned about costs, and they should be. We're running the largest deficit in the history of this province, and offloading any costs onto us at this time is unacceptable. Whether the provinces will all get together, if you could get unanimity from all of the premiers to stand up and say we oppose any offloading of this, there may be some power in that. But I doubt that that's something that we could manage to sort of push back on from here.
The comments I've heard from the justice ministers so far have been that they have referred to the costs that are unacceptable. It's unacceptable for the federal government to simply download these costs without any help, and they've gone only that far. As even the provinces like Quebec and Ontario that have said, that have really expressed the strongest concern. Did you want to add anything? Was there anybody, perhaps the lawyers in the group might, we're into constitutional law, and I don't claim any expertise in that area. Okay, yes?
I'll just throw out a remote possibility, but since you're stimulated in this area, I'd like to hear it. And that is that the current practice in this country is that while the national parliament makes the criminal law, it's the provincial attorneys general that conduct the cases, decide whether or not to prosecute, and decide what charge to lay and what sentence to seek. So if a province was resolved not to use these unwise and coercive charges, they could simply choose not to charge them and prosecute some other way.
I think there's been an example, there's been some examples of that in Quebec where they have refused to apply, and I can't remember what the law was, but I think there's some precedent for that.
Yes, my name is Peter Gorn, and my question is a little off the bill. However, it does have to do with the population of the prison system. I've volunteered at William Head for approximately 20 years, and I've talked to a lot of men who have been incarcerated. It's been my experience that most of the men who have been incarcerated were terribly abused as children, and I'm talking about from the cradle to about 5 years old. And we talk about human rights, and does the federal government or the provincial government, can they offer any rights to these children other than wait until someone reports the abuse? I just have a difficult time in knowing that children are being abused and nothing's being done about it.
Thank you. Did you want to answer that?
I really like your question very much. I'd like to acknowledge a gentleman who is in the room, Mr. Stephen Howell, with whom I worked, and it was my great pleasure to work when he was the director of the Victoria Youth Custody Centre, and we worked together to try to place the way the children were being treated on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and who helped write this brief for Mary Ellen Trepel-Lafont, the children's representative for British Columbia, who says, I want to emphasize that it is crucial not to just comply with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. It is also crucial to define and measure the outcomes which will tell us how well we are complying. We need national standards for reporting on youth justice and the factors connected to adolescent well-being, adolescent safety, health, education, peer connections, and other outcomes are, as you've said, significantly related to preventing criminal behavior. Canada needs a rigorous and comprehensive set of measures if we are to promote the best outcomes for our children and youth. So you're absolutely correct in how you're framing this discussion, and this is the discussion we have not had at a national, or for that matter, provincial level.